Hello and welcome to Say in the City. My name is SatC, and today we are breaking down the 8th episode of season 1 of Sex in the City. Three's a Crowd was written by Jenny Bix and directed by the returning Nicole Holofcener. Jenny Bix will actually return as an executive producer next season, which we'll talk about during the season 1 retrospective. She'll also write the screenplays for the 2003 movie What a Girl Wants and the 2017 movie The Greatest Showman. She was also executive producer for the HBO series Divorce, which also starred Sarah Jessica Parker, and she was the creator and showrunner of the Fox show Welcome to Flatch, a show I've never heard of, but it's okay. Now, this is our third episode that starts with Once Upon a Time, and I have a feeling they were trying to make this a thing. Anyway, this time we open on Charlotte at a party. If you remember for the pilot episode breakdown, Elizabeth, who we originally opened on, was actually named Charlotte in the book. And I'm going to talk about the book here in a moment, but Carrie tells us that Charlotte met Jack at a black tie benefit for Epstein-Barr. Obviously, part of that is triggering, but it's actually EBV, a herpes strain that's the 5th most common virus in the world, which kind of feels like commentary about guys like Jack, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Charlotte chases him through every disease in New York, and we see some of the posters for these events. We get the Circus for Cystic Fibrosis, a genetic disease that damages the lungs, digestive tract, and other organs. There's a Night of 1,000 Tourette's, a neurodevelopmental disorder that involves repetitive movements or unwanted sounds, tics, that can't be easily controlled. We have the hoedown for spina bifida, a birth defect that occurs when the spine and spinal cord don't form properly. And then we see them at some kind of rollerblading event for, I believe, retinitis pigmentosa, a group of rare genetic eye diseases that affect the retina and lead to vision loss. And you could tell that the art department had some fun making these posters, and I bet Jenny Bix was the one pitching the names for the events. But let's meet Jack. So Carrie tells us that Jack's an architect and philanthropist who's good in bed. Jack is played by Joseph Murphy, who will be in a few things here and there after this, but his final credited role was in 2008's Nothing But the Truth. So late one night, Jack asks Charlotte a question that's actually a great question to ask in a new relationship. What are your fantasies? Charlotte responds, I'd love to own my own gallery and maybe a little cottage in Maine. And what in the white hell? A little cottage in Maine? Charlotte, who would never date anyone without money, wants a little cottage in Maine as what, a 5th house? Anyway, Jack clarifies that he means sexually, so Charlotte digs deep for an answer. She finds one. I've always wanted to do it in my parents' bed. Oh, the innocence of being in your 30s when you spent your 20s in a convent. Do Episcopalians have nunneries? She asks Jack what his are, and he says, you, me, and another woman. Okay, before I comment on this man needs a lip treatment. Do they intentionally dehydrate him to play this role? A similar setup actually happens in the book by Candace Bushnell. In Chapter 8, Manhattan Ménage, 7 men pop the inevitable question. She starts, I'm at dinner with a man. We're into a second bottle of 1982 Chateau Latour. Maybe it's our 3rd date, maybe our 10th. It doesn't matter because eventually it always comes up. The inevitable. He begins. Yes, I ask, leaning forward. He rests his hands on my thigh. Perhaps he's going to pop the question. It's not likely, but then again, what is? He begins again. Have you ever... Yes. Have you ever wanted to... What? Have you ever wanted to have sex with another woman? He asks, triumphant. I am still smiling, but there it is, sitting on the table like a puddle of vomit. I already know what's coming next. With me, of course. He says, a threesome. Then comes the kicker. We could maybe get one of your friends. Why would I want to do that? I ask. I don't even bother inquiring why he thinks one of my friends might be interested. Well, I would like it, he says. And besides, you might like it too. I don't think so. We're going to return to this chapter later, but let's finish up the scene. Obviously, Charlotte isn't even taking his suggestion seriously. He tells her, Charlotte, you have no idea how sexy you are, do you? And yes, this is called grooming. Again, let's talk more about this later. This brings us to lunch. dinner, a meal with the girls. Charlotte tells them that Jack wants to have a threesome, and Miranda has the correct response. Of course he does. Every guy does. Despite Samantha saying that threesomes are huge right now, Miranda gives the best advice in this situation, which is don't let him pressure you into it. It's just this guy's cheap ploy to watch you be a lesbian for a night. And we're going to talk about this soon, but Samantha gives some wisdom. She tells them the only way to do a threesome is to be the guest star. The girl the couple gets to come in, screw, and leave. So no surprises here. Sam's had threesomes, but only as the third, something she should have stuck to later on. Spoiler alert. Miranda says she may have had a threesome once, and Carrie hasn't done a threesome. I'm not going to talk about Carrie right now, but I love Samantha's response to Charlotte admitting she's never had a threesome either. You in a threesome? You won't even wear a thong. Samantha drops her second pearl of wisdom during this conversation, and dare I call Sam motherly here? She tells the girls, just make sure that the other woman isn't a friend. Use somebody random. Charlotte says she'd feel safer with a friend she can trust, like Carrie. Carrie says she'd go with someone like Sam, and Sam says there's something sexy about a first-timer like Charlotte. They completely leave Miranda out, and she notices, starting an existential crisis that I think is going to affect Miranda for the rest of the season, possibly even the series. Before we leave, I don't know where this is, but this is not the iconic diner that we'll see starting next season. However, I do appreciate that the producers understand that we need a place to ground us as an audience. This kind of regular place gives us a neutral setting where all of the characters can come and go as they please, while subtly hinting at certain values that all of the characters share. Most of the episodes so far have used Carrie's apartment for these group conversations, but as the series becomes more driven by the ensemble, this neutral location will increase in importance as the common gathering place. We see this in so many sitcoms where characters live and work in different places, like Central Park in Friends, Monk's Cafe in Seinfeld, and McLaren's in How I Met Your Mother. And I'll talk about this more as we get the girls' more realistic diner next season. This brings us to the quandary of the episode. Was Samantha right? Were threesomes the new sexual frontier? We then get this montage with additional narration while Good Lovin' by the Rascals plays, which is a clever choice since it starts with the beat count 1, 2, 3, and the lyrics could easily allude to Jack's manipulation of Charlotte. Don't you want your baby to feel all right? I got the fever, yeah, and you got the cure. Anyway, during the montage, Carrie continues, no question, guys were infatuated with threesomes. And when I started looking, they were everywhere. Well, at least they were in Central Park. We see this guy on a 3-seater bicycle or a tandem bike, which is always creepy to see. Like, look at this nightmare out in nature. To be fair though, that guy is pretty hot. I also love how the woman on the lead seat is like, I'm so happy I'd be doing this without you two. We catch up with the cast of Cocoon, which is a good movie. I think everyone even slightly obsessed with death should watch. Also, Steve Guttenberg is delicious in it. And then we get Fisherman Hat Guy walking 3 Dalmatians, followed by 3 male mallards swimming along. And this is the kind of threesome I'm used to, but we don't need to talk about that right now. Carrie continues as we come back to her apartment. After all, our lives are built on threesomes. Fat, low-fat, non-fat, first business economy, Moe, Larry, Curly, which is a nod to the Three Stooges. Maybe we were never meant to do it with only one other person. Maybe threesomes were the relationship of the future. Carrie is drinking a clearly Canadian sparkling water, which was huge in the 90s. We can also see the Rothko book that made an appearance in Secret Sex. We also see that the book I couldn't identify is New York Interiors. Again, real quick before we move on, I do want to come back to chapter 8 in the book and what Bushnell says about threesomes. She writes, New York is a place where people come to fulfill their fantasies. Money, power, a spot on the David Letterman show. And while you're at it, why not 2 women? And why not ask? Maybe everyone should try it at least once. Another option in a city of options. Or is there a darker side to threesomes? Are they a symptom of all that's wrong with New York? a product of that combination of desperation and desire, particular to Manhattan. And again, I'm going to come back to the book later on to contextualize Charlotte and Miranda's arcs during this episode, but at least we already know that the takes are very different. We cut to Samantha having some adult time. Carrie tells us, meanwhile, Samantha had been busy guest starring in a show I like to call Sam Does the Married Guy. We're introduced to Ken, a 37-year-old wine importer who's happily married to a woman who designed modular office furniture, which is such a specific detail that's totally unnecessary for the story, but it really is details like this one that make Carrie more believable as a print writer. Ken is played by Jonathan Walker, who's been in a lot since this appearance. He was in 2 episodes of The Carrie Diaries as Mr. Reynolds, 2 episodes of Netflix's Daredevil as Senator Randolph Sherry, and recently as Roger Goodell in last year's American Sports Story, which, why is Ryan Murphy making shows about sports ball? Anyway, I love how Sam's bed is just too big for that wall, but she makes it work. Like, I would hate this, but obviously the most important thing in Sam's life is her bed. Carrie tells us this affair was the most exciting thing that had happened to him since the 94 Montrachet. Now, I'm not a rare wine expert, but depending on the vineyard, a bottle of 1994 Montrachet Grand Cru can sell for up to 9,500 euros. We then find Charlotte and Jack going up to the bar after a fantastic date dancing for dyslexia. Jack continues grooming her, and she even flirts a little bit with this woman who I believe is played by Amy DeLucia, an actor who seems to have retired from acting in 2007. But I have to talk about Charlotte's look for a moment. Charlotte's hair and choker are so painfully 90s that it actually does hurt to look at. By the way, this is a full 2.5 years before Lizzie McGuire. It's giving Tank Girl meets Wish Upon a Star. It's giving I want all 5 Spice Girls at once. I'm going to talk about my theory on why she looks like this in a moment. So this leads to Charlotte about to have a threesome with Jack and the woman from the bar. We're definitely in Charlotte's room for this, and this is a very romantic setting for an impromptu threesome. They have candles lit, and both women are wearing lingerie. But we do find out immediately that it was all a dream. Carrie tells us Charlotte hadn't been that excited since she tried on her JV cheerleading uniform for the first time. I said during the pilot episode breakdown that the show was originally going to be more like an anthology series like Black Mirror or The Twilight Zone, where each episode would center around a different set of characters, with Carrie being the only constant. I feel like Charlotte's arc is a remnant of that. I have a feeling this was meant for a much younger character, like one in her early 20s, who hasn't really encountered the possibility of a threesome. That might be why she's treated so naively and kind of infantilized in her thoughts and emotions throughout this episode, hence the hair and choker. Speaking of juvenile, though, we come to Miranda's therapy session with her shrink, played by freaking Uncle Frank from the first 2 Home Alone movies, Gary Bauman. She tells him her dream: I'm in the sandbox with Charlotte, Sam, and Carrie, and none of them will play with me. Please, it's obvious. Look, I know it's juvenile, but it bothers me. I'm attractive, I'm smart, right? Plenty of people should want me for a threesome. He's a hack and we'll talk about it later, but we do get one of the best lines of the episode.
But if your friends won't go down on you, who will?
And thus, the neurotic Miranda is officially born. We then cut to Charlotte and Carrie finally getting a walk and talk. They talk about Charlotte's dream while walking along Greenwich Street between Desbrosses Street and Watts Street. I think this is our first official visit to Tribeca. I think we got a glimpse of it during the Bay of Married Pigs interviews, but those don't count. There are still restaurants and bars along Greenwich Street, but La Vega behind them is closed, and it looks like A to Z framing is no longer there. I believe this building is mostly a hotel now. This red building is black now, and I'm going to talk about this in a later video, but we see so much more graffiti this season than we're ever going to see again. They really didn't shy away from showing the grittier side of the city. Carrie and Charlotte look amazing in this scene. Charlotte is wearing this pink tweed Taka suit with a matching purse, which is also Taka. Taka no longer makes clothes, and they're just a perfumery now. Carrie is wearing the same Fendi trench coat she wore in episode 6. Under the coat, she's wearing this Free People top and BB capris. She's also carrying a Starbucks cup. And we actually won't see a lot of Starbucks product placement in the show, which is good. But this was the same year that You've Got Mail released, which had an entire email dedicated to the coffee shop. And I think it was around this time that people started making their entire personality their Starbucks order. Anyway, Carrie tells Charlotte dreams are a really great way to experiment. It's like buying a dress and keeping the tags on, or making out with a guy with your eyes open. Since Charlotte was so excited by the dream, she asks Carrie if she should have a threesome, saying, Jack says I have a fire inside me. And we get a comeback that is truly timeless. You tell him they make a cream for that. Carrie tells Charlotte to not have a threesome just to make Jack happy. And Charlotte thinks it will bring them closer together, which is the wrong way to think about threesomes, but we'll get to that. Carrie says, Sweetie, don't you think it's weird that you're thinking of sleeping with someone you don't know to get closer to Jack? Charlotte responds, but how well do we ever know the people we sleep with? Which is fair, and I know I've been hard on Charlotte up to this point, and I'm not going to stop. But Carrie tells us that was the thing about Charlotte. Just when you were about to write her off as a Park Avenue Pollyanna, she'd say something so right on you'd think she was a Dalai Lama. Honestly, if it weren't for Charlotte feeling so safe around Carrie, her inclusion in the friend group wouldn't make much sense. We see how Miranda and Samantha constantly disagree with her and poke fun at her, but it's these moments that remind us how formidable Charlotte can be. But real quick, I want to zero in on this Park Avenue Pollyanna reference. Pollyanna is the titular character from the 1913 novel by American author Eleanor H. Porter. It was very popular upon its release and led to a bunch of sequels and even a few film adaptations. But this is not the last time Charlotte will be called a Pollyanna, so I think now's the perfect time to give some context. Pollyanna, the character, is an 11-year-old orphan whose philosophy on life centers around what she calls the glad game, an optimistic and positive attitude she learned from her father. In the novels, her optimism is put to the test over and over again, but it always pulls through and she can be glad in the end. Since the novel was so popular, Pollyanna has become a popular term for a personality type characterized by irrepressible optimism evident in the face of even the most adverse or discouraging of circumstances. It's also sometimes used pejoratively, referring to someone whose optimism is excessive to the point of naivete or refusing to accept the facts of an unfortunate situation. Whether it's used in the pejorative or not, I think this is an important reference for us as an audience as we watch Charlotte develop as a character. So Charlotte's openness to actually having a threesome leads Carrie to question everything in life. She immediately goes to pick up a Village Voice and tells us the Village Voice had more ads looking for threesomes than it did for small rat-infested studios renting at $1,000 a month. But who actually answered these ads? So 2 things here. First, the Village Voice is an alternative news weekly that has a very long history. It was founded in 1955 by Dan Wolfe, Edwin Fancher, and Norman Mailer. It ceased publication in 2017 before returning in 2021. And I actually became familiar with the Village Voice because of Michael Musto, who's still writing for them after all these years. Also, when we see the ads, those ads don't match the classifieds column label. Those 3 are definitely still men seeking men ads. I read a few and had to share what I found. So at the top here, we see GBM, which I believe stands for gay black male. 37 seeks similar gay male, ages 30 to 45. Intellectual, affectionate, upfront, aggressive, reliable, sensitive, loves nature, to read, dancing, salsa music, for friendship first, no femmes, no bottoms. Honestly, I think this one alone should make you understand the kind of trauma that older generations of people had to endure when it came to dating via classifieds. Y'all children think online dating is bad? Imagine the shit you have to deal with now, but it's all basically anonymous. Sincere only, no beards, seeking a young 18 to 25, good-looking, straight-acting guy to chill with and more, 25-year-old looking for a discreet relationship, non-smoker. I do have to say though, if I were a little twink during this time, I would be looking for the longest ad to find me a sugar daddy. Like, who went above and beyond the allotted word count? Also, the audacity level here for some of these ads. These people had to go into an office and hand their ad to someone and pay for it. We also see an ad for Man-Made since 1985. So basically, the classifieds was like watching after-hours cable television, where you're minding your own business and all of a sudden a string of phone sex ads starts playing. This leads us to some fourth wall breaking interviews, but this is the only episode I actually like this interview style because they're not actually interviews. They're what I imagine how Carrie pictures the writer of each ad. The apparent ads that we're watching are mostly for singles looking for threesomes and not couples, which is kind of the point of this episode, but it's fine. I think we get a really clear picture of who's writing classifieds, and let's be honest, this X-Files couple wrote a lot. And golden showers. We're not going to talk about this right now since we have a whole episode to dedicate to this, which makes me so excited I could just pee. But I do kind of wish we got some representation of who answered the ads, like Carrie asked. We then come to Big's apartment since they're now doing sleepovers, and Carrie is sitting in the beige chairs we got a glimpse of in Secret Sex. As Big walks up, we can see the bar to the right. They do coupley things, and Carrie picks the wrong tie, but neither is really a strong choice unless he's wearing a zoot suit. Big announces his ex-wife, and Carrie is shocked. So yeah, I'm gonna say it again. What the fuck do these two talk about? As a matter of fact, instead of talking about it with her partner when he brings it up, we cut to Carrie, Miranda, and Samantha shopping in what I believe is the former D.S.E. spa that used to be on Hudson Street. Carrie tells them about the new development, and Miranda tries to be the voice of reason by reminding Carrie that this is the ex, but Carrie won't hear it. And Samantha doesn't help the situation. But then she says, there's only one thing left to do. And Miranda confirms, you kidding? Check out the ex. And I'm not going to comment on the ethics of knowingly being the other woman. And we'll see Sam reap what she sows later. But I do feel like we just witnessed Carrie's villain origin story. Miranda and Samantha just gave her permission to stalk Big's ex. And just like that, we get a decision that will have consequences for the next 25 plus years. So Carrie hatches up a plan to meet Big's ex, Barbara, who works in publishing. Since she's a writer, she'll pitch a book for Barbara to reject just to get a few minutes with her face to face. But seriously, I don't care how insightful the moment was. Anytime you start a thought with Charlotte was right, you should stop what you're doing immediately. Also, Carrie, babe, you're not sleeping with Big. You're in an apparently monogamous relationship. Now, while Carrie waits to meet Barbara, we get to see her outfit, and I'm low-key obsessed with this outfit. The socks with the Mary Janes, the just below the knee black skirt and simple beige top with the fuchsia trench coat and oversized Chanel handbag. So good for a semi-professional look. We meet Barbara, played by Noelle Beck. Beck is most well known for her role as Lily Walsh Snyder on As the World Turns. She'll also go on to play single mother Janie Pierce on the short-lived NBC sitcom Tucker and Mrs. Kidd in The Carrie Diaries. We see a few books around Barbara's office, including Baba Yaga and the Little Girl and Baba Yaga by Katya Arnold, On the Brink of Extinction, The California Condor by Caroline Arnold, Tangletown by Kurt Cyrus, and Sammy Keys and the Hotel Thief. Basically, we have a lot of different children's books by a lot of different publishers, so we can't really say Barbara works for this publishing company. But honestly, publishing is a complex industry, so it's possible that we still could have in 1998. Carrie finds out Barbara is a children's book publisher, so she pitches the story of Little Kathy and Her Magic Cigarettes, a children's book for adults. And too bad Carrie didn't pitch this back when America was great. When your favorite television cartoons would take a moment to sell you cigarettes right in the middle of the show. Barbara surprisingly goes for it, which prompts Carrie to tell us it was the last straw. She was smart, beautiful, and she got me. I'd have to kill her. This brings us to Sam doing some flower shopping, and this flower shop is in a familiar area. It's just across and down the street from where Carrie was single bashed in episode 3. This is University Floral Design, and it's still in this location. The Albert behind Ken is also still there, and Samantha's jacket should also look familiar since Sam wore it outside of Balzac in the 5th episode. Sam runs into Ken and his wife Ruth, played by Lisa Emery. Emery was Beth in 2002's Unfaithful. She was also in 4 episodes as Louise Thompson in Netflix's Jessica Jones, and more recently as Darlene Snell in the Netflix series Ozark. Ken handles the entire situation horribly and tips Ruth off to the affair. Despite what Carrie says here, that afternoon was a first for Samantha. She'd successfully screwed a guy in under 2 minutes. Ken screwed himself. Miranda has another nightmare, so the four of us get into a cab, only they won't let me sit in the back with them. They make me right up front with the driver, who happens to be the original Chris from the Partridge Family. Now, this reference is so obscure if you're not the same age as these characters. Chris was the youngest Partridge on the show, and he was played by Jeremy Gelbwaks for the first season and by Brian Forster after that. Chris was the only Partridge child played by two different actors. According to IBD Trivia, the official reason in 1971 for Gelbwaks leaving the show was that his father's job had been transferred to West Virginia. However, in a 2005 interview with the Television Academy Foundation, Shirley Jones, who portrayed the mom, Shirley Partridge, mentioned that he was not happy doing it. His parents wanted him to do it, so we replaced him. Anyway, Miranda comes on to her therapist, who swiftly shuts that shit down. And no wonder, because clearly Miranda is having a breakdown. This outfit may be the worst one we've seen the entire show thus far. Like, why does she have so many collars? I'm not going to say this is karma, but let's move on. We find Carrie and Big in bed, apparently about to have sweet sex. She tells us, "That night I thought I could put the whole Barbara thing out of my mind. After all, Mr. Big was with me now." So she gets it. Oh wait, she then imagines Barbara in bed with them. She turns away saying, "So I guess you couldn't avoid a threesome, because even if you're the only person in the bed, someone has always been there before you." Now, this is true, but this isn't a condoms commercial. Carrie admits to us that she's fantasizing about Big's ex-wife, but that's not what we're talking about right now. He gives Carrie an opening to talk about her psychosis, and she lies to him.
"I was rooting for you! We were all rooting for you! How dare you!"
He brings up the ex-wife in the room, and she asks what happened. He tells her alienation of affection followed by divorce. What the fuck does that mean? Oh, I get it. Justification for what we're about to find out. Got it. The next day, Carrie meets Barbara for lunch at Arte Pasta, which used to be located at 81 Greenwich Avenue in the West Village. L'Antica Pizzeria de Michelle NYC is now in that location. So I'm not saying Carrie tried to copy Barbara's hair, but it does seem as though they're trying to show us how similar but different they are. They both showed up in blazers, but Carrie took hers off to reveal this halter top beneath. Carrie is blonde and Barbara is brunette, but they both have this nice curl at the end of their blowouts. Barbara even comments on Carrie's hair. Anyway, they discuss being friends and have a nice long drinking lunch after Barbara says that they rejected Carrie's excellent idea. Eventually, Carrie asks about Barbara's past relationships, and we find out that Big cheated on her with her best friend. She then asks Carrie if she's seeing anyone, and can we see in Barbara's eyes that she already knows that Carrie is seeing Big? Carrie says no one special, and we move on to Samantha. Samantha gets a call from Ken saying he dumped Ruth, and then she gets a call from Ruth who says, "I found your number in his sock drawer." Damn it, Ken. So, since I'm not going to talk about the ethics of knowingly being a Jolene, I'm just going to say that I love the editing of this scene. It's chaotic and exactly what Sam deserves. And Ken, who's already taken his ring off. And Ruth. Honestly, all three of them suck. But two quick things before moving on. First, Ken loves ugly ties. He and Miranda could be a couple. Next, Lisa Emery, who plays Ruth, is 4 years older than Kim Cattrall, but Ken is supposed to be at least 3 years younger than Samantha. So I'm just putting that out there. But considering the rampant ageism in Hollywood, especially in the 1990s, it feels even ickier that Ken was having this affair. Anyway, that night at the Attention Deficit Disorder masked ball, Charlotte felt free to indulge her fantasy. It's amazing what some sequins on a stick can do to free up the inhibitions. Charlotte finds someone to flirt with. Do you like peacocks? And I do love this mask. Is it enough for me to understand why Charlotte picked her? No. But love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind. And therefore, is Winged Cupid painted blind? Just kidding, this isn't love. Also, if two white people are staring at you like this with masks on and one winks, run. This is natural-born Park Avenue killer shit. The peacock is played by Sherry Alexander, who's mostly known for her role as Samantha Andrews in As the World Turns. But fun fact, she was married to writer, producer, and director Michael Crichton until his death in 2008. Charlotte and Jack run upstairs, where Charlotte tells him another fantasy is to have sex upstairs at a party. So they get all kinds of risky by not locking the door. I do like the peacock's gloves, though. And Charlotte's shoes. Hate the blue homecoming dress, though. The peacock joins them, and It goes as well as one would expect in formal wear upstairs at a masked ball with a total stranger. She doesn't introduce herself at all, but since Jack is a sexual deviant, it ends as one would expect. And honestly, I'm so glad it ends this way for Charlotte. She's not ready, and Jack is not the right guy, even if she were. We then find Miranda entering a restaurant, and she goes from her worst look of the season to possibly her best. And we learn that she's there answering an ad for a threesome. This couple is played by Catherine Corpeny and PJ Heslin, who both will retire shortly after this. The wife tells Miranda, "It's a huge fantasy of Mark's. I offered to do it for his 30th birthday." And this scenario comes up in a later episode as well. So is this a thing? Anyway, I love Cynthia Nixon so much in this scene. She really plays up Miranda's insecurities and vulnerability, which is really the first time we've seen Miranda like this. She's usually so confident and no bullshit, but as soon as the girls left her out of their hypothetical three-ways, she got caught in this doom spiral that weirdly lasts for a few episodes. But while she's definitely vulnerable here, she's trying so hard to be sexy in front of complete strangers who just gave her some validation. I almost feel bad for this couple as she walks out on them, which is a nice change of pace since Ken and Ruth suck. Carrie tells us her shrink suggested she come 3 times a week. And this is a great lesson. Don't leave out one of your friends when you discuss hypothetical threesomes or orgies or group vacations. We end the episode walking with Big and Carrie after a date. Carrie tells us this is 8 days after they were in bed together. Clearly they didn't have drinks at dinner because this sounds exactly how sober me talks to men. Finally, Big asks what's up, and they proceed to have, at least in my mind, the most dialogue they've had since the pilot episode. Big admits he cheated on his ex. Carrie admits she had lunch with his ex. Big admits he knows they had lunch, which is a surprise to Carrie. And again, did Barbara already know that Carrie's in a relationship with Big when they went to lunch? Is this the goddamn Game of Thrones? The game of Manolos? Finally, Big says what we all suspected. The reason they had a threesome is because the marriage was already at its end. If I had to guess, they had the threesome with Barbara's best friend, who turned around and continued sleeping with Big. Carrie ends the episode by telling us, "And then it was just the two of us. And I realized the real appeal of the threesome. It was easy. It's intimacy that's the bitch." And for as irritating and irrational as Carrie was in relation to finding out about Barbara, I'm glad she snapped out of it. And all it took was actually communicating with her partner. Groundbreaking. Before we wrap things up, I do want to point out 2 things. First, is Carrie wearing red pleather or vinyl pants? If so, interesting choice. Second, they don't specify this, but it looks like we're finally outside Carrie's apartment brownstone on Perry Street in the West Village. This brownstone has actually been in the news recently because they're finally able to put up a gate to keep fans out. I also found out that the facade is actually blocked on Google Maps, like it's a confidential government facility. Also, as we close the episode, Meant to Be by Squirrel Nut Zippers plays, which even my cynical ass has to admit is cute, since the lyrics are, "All the time, I'm finding ways to make things fall in line. I know how tricky things can be, but I really do believe that you are mine. And all the stars are there before us. Listen here, some things are meant to be. Tried to take it slow, tried to lose control, but I'll tell you what the trick is. What you get is what you had to give away. When I learned, I found my eyes were opened. Long ago, I had a dream that quickly faded. Goes to show how tricky dreams can be, but wouldn't you agree that those who know will whisper when they see us walking, there's a love that's always meant to be." This song was on their 1997 album Hot, which also featured the slight hit Hell. To wrap things up, I want to quickly mention just how different all of this is in the book. As the chapter title suggests, Bushnell gets a group of 7 men together to discuss the menage a trois, all lured in by free drinks, free joints, and free honey roasted peanuts. They actually have a pretty in-depth, albeit predictable discussion about the why, how many, and who when it comes to their own experiences. Finally, though, someone named Chloe comes in and bursts their misogynistic bubble by giving them a dose of reality. She tells them, "I think every girl's least favorite thing is a threesome. Girls like one-on-one. They like the attention." She also glares at them and calls them out on their shit. So I like Chloe a lot. And honestly, I think the Miranda that we get at the beginning of the episode was based on Chloe, and I do appreciate that we attempted to get a stronger female perspective when it comes to threesomes, even if they took the really safe, optimistic route. But really, this isn't the last time we're going to experience threesomes with the girls, so it's fine. There are some things I truly appreciate about this episode. We got our first attempt at a common gathering place for the characters. We got interviews that I can finally approve of. We got an emotional roller coaster with Miranda's confidence and wardrobe. Big and Carrie are actually communicating, and we finally got a female writer, and it shows. This was such a huge step up from the previous episode. Of course, you know what they say about rock bottom.
Nowhere to go but up, right?
That brings us to our BIPOC character count, which is still at 2. But that is the full breakdown of the 8th episode of Sex and the City, Three's a Crowd. Please like the video if you enjoyed it, and be sure to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.